Welcome to the Flower Lounge, a place for conversations with wildly creative people and a little plant-loving wisdom to help you experience life in full bloom. I'm Katie Hess, flower alchemist and founder of LOTUSWEI, and I believe in a world where we're all living at our personal edge. I am so excited for this week's conversation with a dear friend and woman who is doing some incredible work in the world. You guys are going to love this week's Flower Lounge. I'm going to tell you about Robin Sandomirsky. She is a luminary intuitive, a life cartographer, and a medicine keeper of Soyala. She works from the cozy embrace of a stroke of luck cottage in a small town, New England. She is an active single mama to two littles and a small collection of four-legged light bringers. Robin's main work is collaborative one-on-one luminary transformation sessions, which I have experienced, and they are incredible. She is also currently creating and holding her newest invitation, Death Medicine Keepers Project and Circle. Robin is co-creator of Liberated Lines and Intuit and Inspire. She's also currently working on a book of story and poetry, and she's an amazing poet, based on her experiences taking care of her best friend and soul sister who died of breast cancer in July of 2017. When Robin is not working or writing, you find her chasing light, exploring natural movement, making out with the forest, and alchemizing in her kitchen. Equally unafraid of primal coffee, green smoothies, and whiskey straight up, Robin is deeply inspired to hold space for quiet and love living loud. Thank you so much for being with us, Robin.
Thanks so much for having me.
So usually we start off with a little exercise. I wondered if we could do that together and just close your eyes and go back to a time in your childhood when you played around flowers or plants or trees, and just thinking about what that evokes, what you might have been doing, who you were with. And if you can think of a favorite flower or plant or tree, think about what that might be and the three words you would use to describe its personality. And then when you're ready, open your eyes and just tell me what you were thinking about, what you were up to in your mind, what your favorite one was, and the three words you would use to describe its personality.
Okay, so I was immediately in this conservation land that we could walk to from the house that I first lived in when I was little. And it was the time of year where there's a path down the middle of the field, but the grasses are all really high all around you if you wander off that path. And I feel like I had this sensation that my mom was nearby and maybe the dogs that we had when I was growing up and my brother, I was sort of also alone in the field with the grasses and surrounded by trees. That's where I was.
And when you think of a favorite flower or botanical from that time, what do you think of? Or what pops in your mind?
So it was Queen Anne's lace for sure. So tall and all around the field, mixed in with the grasses.
And if you were to describe
And my three words were ethereal, clear, and grace.
Ethereal, clear, and grace. Because what we find is that typically describes the way that you bring your gifts into the world and you at your essence.
Gosh, I hope so.
Sounds like you.
It's amazing how easy it is, just through that little meditation or exercise game that you just did, how easy it is to get back to that feeling of that child state, surrounded by nature and just freedom and lightness,
And freedom is usually, when I think of your work, I think of you offering up different methods and ways for people to experience freedom. I wondered if you wanted to talk about that at all, in your work, how you inspire people to remember freedom and experience freedom.
I think that freedom is a huge guiding force for me. And I think that I would say in my work, what I try to do is invite people to discover their own their own like flavor or their own style of freedom. So like what actually feels like an invitation to freedom or feels like freedom to each individual. So I tend not to come at things as like prescriptive, like do this to feel this, but I really like to invite people to explore what is true for them. And I think across the board that when we feel trapped, it's uncomfortable. And when we feel free, it's more comfortable. And that, like, it's as simple as, I remember many years ago, I was like making a list of things that I thought I could do for myself to like take care of myself or make my life easier. And each thing that I wrote down, I was like, I need to drink more water. I need to get more sleep. I need to do this. I need to do that. And I looked at the list and I was like, this list makes me feel like I'm already failing, which doesn't feel good, you know? And I just crossed out every I need to and wrote, I'm free to. So I was like, I'm free to drink more water. I am free to get more sleep. I'm free to prioritize self-care. I'm free to, and it was like a completely different feeling, like completely different feeling. And that moment, actually, like remember where I was, that was a moment of clarity for me, of just the difference in the same, sort of doing the same thing, but with freedom at the center of it. It can feel really different.
And what, just to like get real personal for a second, in terms of your freedom, when you think of freedom, what brings you freedom? Like, what are the things that bring you freedom?
Oh, that's a really good question. What brings me freedom? I would say the thing that brings me the greatest actual sense of freedom is probably my practice, which is, God, it's so like, of course it is. And it's taken me so many years to like really embrace that. But there's a certain like energy state or way of being that I personally can find through what I consider my practice. And in that place or in that way, I experience a sense of like more continuity in a state of freedom or staying more connected to a sense of freedom.
And do you want to talk about your practice at all, or how that has evolved over the years and maybe how that relates to your work?
Sure. Let's see. It's funny. Somebody asked me the other day, like, can I ask you a personal question? Like, what is your practice? And I was like, I don't even know how to answer that, which is probably why I use the word practice so liberally, because I get to sort of like hide under that little blanket. But I think, long story, short story, when I was around probably 18 or 19, I ended up at a telepathic animal communication workshop. And I always sort of cite that as like this, like that was the moment or the weekend that really totally changed the trajectory of my life. And from that experience and that practice of like interspecies telepathic communication, then the next thing that sort of arose in my life were these sort of traditional shamanic practices, and learning and studying some of those with a shaman that I mentored with for some years. And so those practices, like specifically journey work, became sort of a core for me, in a sense of like, those both to me felt like something that I will refer to now as direct connection, which is just sort of this sense that it's possible to feel connected to and receive from sort of anything, you know. And then also, actually around the same time as the telepathic animal communication stuff, I had some friends who were practicing Buddhism, and so I got introduced to that a little bit then, started studying some different meditation practices. And so over the years, all of those, you know, I became certified I'm a technically a yoga teacher. I've just studied a lot of different modalities and ways, and what it has turned into is what I refer to as my practice. But I don't fit into one set tradition neatly.
It seems to me like when I think of your work and you always appear to me to be a person who, it's like rubber hits the road, you do the work. There are a lot of people out there saying, offering many different methods and ways and talk, but in terms of really walking your talk and putting what you recommend to other people, putting those practices into place in your own life seems to be top priority for you in a very real way.
It's really, really important to me. I think that I have a level of, I don't even know what the word is, like maybe accountability, but like I'm not going to invite anyone into a practice or a theory or a concept or a way of being that I don't feel like I have explored deeply myself, because that feels irresponsible to me. Yeah, I think I hold myself to a pretty high standard in that way.
Thank you for saying that, because I do see that oftentimes in the field where, people will learn from other people and then immediately put it into practice with their own communities. And I think that, like you said, it can be dangerous, or it can just simply be that you may not understand exactly what it's doing to your body, mind, psyche. And one of the things that I really respected when we were together in Costa Rica was when you were talking about your shaking practice or the physical movement practice. And you mentioned giving yourself a time period to practice it for yourself, to really notice what it did for your own body before you even thought about sharing it with other people. And I think that that's so important in a world where, there are a lot of different things flying around that we could tap into, to know really from our own experience, because you can Google anything, you can take any class, you can take any workshop. Knowledge is, there's infinite knowledge, but wisdom, direct wisdom from your own experience, I think is unsurpassed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do agree with you. And it's not to say that I won't sometimes say to people like, oh, I heard of this thing, I've never tried it, but I wonder if it might be good for you, go check it out. But I would never like teach that thing, or I would never say, I can support you through learning this. I'm really only going to walk through the forest with someone that's a forest that I have been walking through, I don't know. There's a lot of really talented and amazing people in the world doing really amazing things. And so I don't feel like I need to know how to do everything. I feel like it's really important for me to be deep in the practices that make sense to me. And then to offer whatever I'm offering is always coming from this concept that like, I am the medicine. I am the medicine. And through my practices, I get clearer and clearer and closer to myself, like my true self, or to the best that I can at this time on this planet in this life. That's the space from which I want to sit with people. And then all I'm offering is either the medicine of me or the medicine of what happens between the two of us, So, and if that is not the right medicine, then I trust that someone else is out there that's going to offer the right thing. I'm not going to try to sell something that I don't know.
You had an experience this summer that really radically changed your life. And I wondered if we could talk about that a little bit and how that's changed your work.
Yes. So in my bio, I mentioned that I'm working on this book right now about these 2 weeks in July where I was out in North Bend and Washington State helping to provide care for a very, very dear friend of mine. And I often describe her as a soul sister because I feel like our connection went beyond just friendship in some ways. So her name was Kelly Clark, and she also worked under the name Umber Dove. And I was with her for 2 weeks in July, living in her home with her and her husband and her mom, taking care of her as she sort of transitioned out of this earthly life. And she passed away actually the day that I was supposed to leave. So I was changing flights for her. And it was an amazing, amazing experience throughout the time being there. So she died of breast cancer. And so actually she had breast cancer the whole time that I knew her. But she was sort of shockingly vibrant throughout the many years of her illness. And you met her, so you can attest to that.
I would, oh my God, she's gorgeous and bubbly and beautiful and creative. I would have had no idea that anything was going on physically.
And so actually when we first met, we worked together. So she came to me and we did luminary transformation sessions together. And that working relationship continued forever until she passed. So we had that level of connection also. So I was very intimate with the details of her physical health and well-being and all of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I went out in July knowing that she was struggling, and we had sort of Western medicine had sort of run out of options to offer her. She had been pursuing alternative treatments the entire time. And, you know, nothing was changing the course of the growth and spread of metastasized breast cancer in her body. But she was still hopeful that we were going to discover something, and she was meeting a new practitioner right around the time that I was headed out there. But her physical health had declined quite a bit. And so I just wanted to go help take care of her, and she wanted me to come help take care of her. I didn't have any previous hospice care experience at all, but I literally could not get there soon enough. And while I was there, had the blessing and opportunity to provide this really hands-on care and spend some really beautiful time with her and watch her transform. And it was amazing. And I will say that there were many times when I was there when I felt so clearly that my practices, again, under that blanket of all these different things that I have learned and really actively worked with in my life, that they are what had prepared me for those 2 weeks. And those practices held me during that time, and they're what allowed me just to be there with her and be present and open to the experience really deeply. And it changed me. So it made me see how I had been preparing for it. And it also just it just changed me, and it opened my eyes to a lot of how beautiful and profound death can be. And as the months have passed since then, I have felt inspired to attempt to hold space for conversation and inner exploration and dialogue around our relationship to death and dying and grieving. So our sense of our own death. It's we're all gonna die, and everyone we know is gonna die. Every tree, every plant, every insect, everything is going to die. And yet there is so much time and energy, whether it's conscious or unconscious, is put into avoiding thinking about that, working with it, talking about it, being comfortable with it. And so it's and that, I think that is creating even more fear, even more discomfort. I had no idea that watching my best friend die would be beautiful. Who would imagine that, right? But it was, and I felt, I don't know, and it changed my relationship to living, because there's something about being less afraid to die that made me feel more freedom in the way that I approach living.
Yeah, it reminds me, there's this practice in Tibetan Buddhism where you sometimes, it'll be almost prescribed that you take a certain period of time and really reflect on your own death, that it's, imminent, that it will happen. And I think some people might think, wow, that's a really odd practice, but it's like they say the same thing, right? That you can't really, really, really know living until you know that there's an end to it and that you'll die. And then it raises all these interesting questions like, how would we like to die? And who would we like to have there? And what kind of experience would we like it to be? I mean, right, you see all of these, the sort of resurgence of midwives and women who are pregnant writing plans for what would I like my birth to be like, whether it is or it isn't. But we never have the conversation of the other major, beautiful and intimate transition, which is death.
Yeah.
And so, you having been through it, I wondered what you could offer in terms of just your personal experience and, what kind of conversations you want to have in your death medicine project.
Yeah. So I feel like the death medicine project is like, I keep saying it's bigger than I am. So we'll see, because I feel like there's so much space to explore. But I will say that as Kelly's health deteriorated, I privately, or like without, like not between, she didn't ask me to do this and she and I were not discussing this, but I privately started trying to inform myself a little bit around processes around death and dying that might feel comfortable to me. I looked at a few books, and really like condensed time. So Kelly's health deteriorated really, really rapidly. So, I spent 4 days reading these books or something, right? Wow. But really, because I feel like I was already primed for it, it was like, oh yeah, this makes sense. And a lot of it is removing the stigma of just thinking and talking about death. And so I was able to I had conversations with friends of mine in that time around, I wonder where would I want to die? Who would I want to have with me? Do I want to be inside? Do I want to be outside? Do I want to be at a hospital? Do I want to be at my house? Do I want to be in my backyard, in my bed? Who would I want with me? Who would I want around? And because I started thinking like that and having those conversations, it did allow me to gently have those conversations with her. Of course, in hindsight, I wish that had all happened sooner, but it also made me realize, like, we don't need to wait until we are facing this transition in order to sit with it. In that familiarizing, the repetition of imagining and dreaming and thinking about and talking about can actually raise our comfort level, and that's a profound difference in relationship to something that is inevitable. For me, with the beliefs that I hold currently, I also think that it is a freedom, that death is an ultimate freedom. And I don't wish for it to come anytime soon, but I know that it will be amazing and beautiful when it happens for me. So that's just my belief system. So that sort of primes me to feel a little comfortable having the conversations. But it's amazing how uncomfortable our society at large is with them. Even just watching people's faces change when I tell them what I'm working on or what I'm writing about, or what even just that my friend died. It's like and I no judgment or blame on the people whose faces are changing. We're in a society that has not cultivated support and education and comfort around the topic of death. And so it's like, it's this big freeze up. And it is, I keep saying it's beautiful. I was surprised by how beautiful it was. It is also challenging. It is also scary. It is also different. Grief is grief is real, and it is hard work, you know, and also people who are experiencing the death of a loved one and the grieving that comes after it often are feeling isolated and alienated in that. And is there a way to ease some of that also, you know? So that's some of what I think about sometimes.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit about death being beautiful, or having a transition be beautiful. And something I've heard you talk a little bit about in the past is how Kelly's death affected you and changed your internal landscape, as well as just sort of like the nuts and bolts of what did you do during the last few days or during her death process, or, you know, to celebrate her as a being. What were some of the rituals that you brought in to make that a beautiful experience?
Yeah. So first of all, Kelly was a really amazing person. She was incredibly talented artist and like really a creative force. And she also was just like kind. Like she was just the real deal of kindness. And that it was magical in and of itself when she was in her full vibrancy and glory. As I watched her transition towards her death, and I just want to say that because this has come up in a lot of conversations that I've had with others who were close with her, that we sort of, or I'll speak for myself, I sort of thought she was probably dying. I wasn't 100% sure what was going on. And we both spoke about the fact that she might be dying, and we spoke about things that she might not be dying. We spoke with hope. And I don't know if that is always involved in everybody's transition, but it was big. It was big for Kelly. So I just want to have that out there, because I tend to talk about the death process and forget to mention that she wasn't 100% on board. You know, she wasn't like, okay, I'm dying tomorrow. You know, we were holding both all the time. We were holding death, and we were holding life at the same time. So in that process, some of the things that made that process so beautiful was watching as Kelly's health deteriorated. What I thought of was like, I was like, wow, she is just becoming her essence. She is like melting down to her essence. And her essence was loving and kind and sweet and connected. And being around that, it's like the shedding of all the pretense that you build up in a lifetime of small and large hurts, and the way that we build these operating systems to deal with the world. It was like her operating system just like melted away, and she was just in this being state. My intention going in before I went to care for her, my intention that I had set was that I hold a being state. That was my whole job, was just to be present with her. That was my work. So that she was also doing that, it was this like amplification. And I felt my own pretense and my own defenses and my own harder parts just like melt away as hers did. And I told her that, you know, it was such she like every single thing I did, and I did every single thing she needed. And every single thing I did, she would say, thank you. And I was like, you can stop thanking me. Like I have an overarching thank you built in, or like you could thank me once at the end of the day. But she just never did, because that's just where she was at. And we had this like little ritual that developed where she would say thank you, and I would say thank you, because it was to care for her was a gift, and to be around her energy was a gift. And like I said, so she just was more and more like the pure self, or the pure spirit, or the pure life force energy. And that being present to that and naming it and watching it happen and being conscious of it and choosing to opt in to join her, that changed me. And seeing the beauty of life and of, I mean, she just, I wrote a piece, and it's somewhere, about the day that I fed her watermelon, which was like a few days before she passed. And oh my God, just watching her eat like 4 bites of watermelon, it was like a prayer. It was the most pure form of deep enjoyment of life. It was like watching her put this piece of watermelon, tiny, tiny little piece of watermelon, in her mouth and just melt with it. And it was like, that is a teaching. That is a teaching that, and I was devoted in my time there to gathering up the teachings that were being presented to me, because I could see how profound and transformative they were. And I just love profound and transformative, you know? So I was like, it was hard and it was sad. And there were moments when I had to, you know, we had this semi-unspoken rule that no one was allowed to like have a major meltdown in the room with her, you know? So people cried around her because it was hard and it was challenging. But when you had to have the big cry that was like, I think my friend is dying, it was like, go somewhere else and do that, you know? And we did, you know, we all did that. We all had those moments. So it was hard. It was hard and it hurt, and it continues to be hard and painful. It's just that as much as it is hard and painful, it was beautiful and transformative. And that, I want everyone to know that. I want everyone to know that, so that there's less fear and there's space to see the beauty of humanity and of this gift that we have of these really momentary lives, and of how much we can devote ourselves to. Because when I feel more comfortable with death, it allows me to feel more comfortable, really, really, really unabashedly devoting myself to the things that feel important to me, without so much worry about getting it right or getting it wrong or failing or succeeding or what other people think. So yeah, I really want to be, if there's anything I can do in the world, I really want to be able to help to support and inspire humanity, you know, to be as beautiful and profound as we can be. And bearing witness to a really, really beautiful and profound person's really beautiful and profound passing, it inspired me to share that however I can. Kelly and I had some collaborations that we worked on sort of professionally. And after she passed, I remember just feeling this huge grief that we wouldn't get to birth any more of our collaborations, because we had done some retreats together, we had taught some classes together, but we had big plans, you know, and it was just so painful to lose that. And then I just was, you know, I was sitting there in my meditation, and it's just like so clear, like, we're not done collaborating. You know, she's like laughing from the great beyond, like, oh, the collaboration has just begun. Like, we just experienced a monumental teaching together, and I'm here to share the collaboration with the here, if I'm brave enough to do that. So so Kelly was one of the bravest people that I have met, and I think that many, many people who've met her, and even people who never met her, who were inspired by her work, would say the same thing of her. They would say that woman was brave. And it is amazing to feel how it's almost like I received some of that bravery as part of the gift of the process of being with her as she transformed and departed. That I get to be a little bit braver myself.
Mm-hmm. And how does that bravery carry you through that sort of endless cycle of grief that may, roll around? Yeah. Because I think grief has this funny quality to it that it's just sort of always lingering there, right? And it comes and goes.
I'm such a newbie here. Actually, I'm flying out soon in a couple of days. I'm flying out to the Seattle area to be with sort of Kelly's inner circle and honor the 6-month anniversary of her passing. So I've been grieving her death for only 6 months, which is not very long. So the bravery, I think that I always think of my experience of living here as that I have an internal landscape and then there's the external landscape. And the courage in the internal landscape is staying devoted to my practice because I know that that's what supports me, and also leaning into the belief that there is no feeling that I am going to have that I can't stay with myself for, or that I can't handle. So I have different parts of me that are grieving in different ways. I'm a grieving friend. I'm a grieving collaborator. I'm grieving the spiritual loss. And Kelly and I had a really deep spiritual exploration connection. And then there's me. There's my core me. And that being can hold the parts that are hurting. I don't always get that right. Sometimes I forget and I enact like these old patterns of separation and pushing away and self-identifying with a part and feeling overwhelmed. But the bravest moments are the moments where I remember that it's okay to have these really intense feelings and that I can love them and love myself through them. And then in the external landscape, launching a project called Death Medicine Keepers is not something I maybe would have done, a year and a half ago, because it sounds kind of weird and it's not fully polished, and people, I'm not a death doula. Like there are so many reasons that I could stop myself, or that, and it's like not unnecessary. It's unnecessary.
Well, and you're a human being.
I am.
I mean, it's sort of like you're a human being. You had this experience that qualifies you.
Yeah. I have a note on the Death Medicine Keepers project page. I can't remember exactly what it says, but it says something like, there's no particular kind of experience that's necessary to join this offering. If you're a human being on this planet right now with breath in your lungs, you're welcome. And that's the truth. I was talking to someone the other day about the project and they were like, but what is it? What is it? Mm-hmm. Like, why and I was like, it's not a training. It's not for people who are, it's not specifically designed for people who are looking to like specialize in death midwifery or death doulaing, or not that those folks aren't welcome, but it's just, we are all facing our own death and the death of everyone. And so it's a space for all of us to explore that using, again, like circling back to what you brought up at the beginning, we will use practices and exploration methods that I feel very comfortable and confident in my own exploration of. And so that's the medicine part, right?
So tell me, who actually do you see being in this, like being attracted to this project? Like, because, is it people who are facing the death of a loved one or who have lost someone or not? Or is it really for anyone that?
Yeah. So I'll tell you, it's funny, as I was caring for Kelly and after she passed, I was writing a lot of poetry. And I was sharing some of it on social media, not all of it, some of it. Mm-hmm. And people were reaching out to me and thanking me for sharing. And I was hearing from folks who were facing some kind of illness themselves. Mm-hmm. I was hearing from folks who had a loved one who they thought would die before they did for some reason or another, who were saying, thank you for showing me or sharing that you did this in a way that felt safe and beautiful and connected. And I was hearing from people who had been grieving for years and weren't really sure what to do with it. Mm-hmm. And because I was writing openly about my grief, they were like, yeah, that makes sense. Yes. And it was opening up a path for them to explore the parts of themselves that were grieving. So that's everyone, right? That's the entire population is going to lose someone or has lost someone. With that said, I guess it is specifically for people who are looking for a space to explore their relationship to that through the kinds of ways that I like to explore, which means that there will be some guided like meditation and awareness sort of shifting type invitations. There will be story. As you pointed out to me, I like to tell stories. I'll share some of my writing that I've done and invite others to use that as a way to create something, whether it's through writing or painting or whatever your medium is. I think that creative practice is key. And of course, there will be some really, really gentle movement invitations, because I think that movement is a nice way to layer through things that are confusing or challenging or big, that feel big, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what we'll be doing. And I have invited, so because the people that I shared the death experience with are the other people who were close with Kelly. So for right now, I have invited some of those people to come on and share some of their story and their experience also, because I think that talking, dialoguing, and like you said, so it's funny you said the birth thing, because I'm working on this short piece about recognizing, while I was caring for Kelly, I started to recognize this thing that she did that mm-hmm. reminded me of what I did when I was giving birth. Mm-hmm. And I was talking to her about it a little bit. I was like, where do you go? I see you go somewhere. And it reminds me, like she was there, she was sitting there, but mm-hmm. I saw her go internally somewhere far away, somewhere deep mm-hmm. inside. And I'm a feeler, right? And I was very, very connected to Kelly those last few weeks. And so I was like, I could feel everything. I mean, not everything, I won't say everything, but I was really connected to her. So I was feeling her sort of go inside. And I was like, I feel like you go really, really deep inside somewhere. And it mm-hmm. reminds me of what it was like during childbirth. Mm-hmm. It's like you're doing this thing. You're having this transformative experience, and there's a piece of you that just goes to be alone with yourself for parts of it. Mm-hmm. And I so there's that takes me to story. When I was preparing for both of my births, I have two kids, I was a voracious story reader. I just read as many birth stories as I could, home birth, hospital birth, C-section birth. I just mm-hmm. read people's firsthand accounts mm-hmm. because I don't know, it brought me comfort, and it helped me feel like, well, if I've read 500 of them, there will be little pieces from each one that are applicable, right? Mm-hmm. So I also like this concept of sharing story around what is it like to be around someone who's dying, bearing witness to death, scared of it. It's beautiful, it's wonderful. And so I was having these conversations with people, and I'm like, let's have these conversations more publicly in case it's helpful to others to be able to sit in and ask questions. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm open, mm-hmm. I'm an open person. And I really like to explore my relationship to things. So I'm happy to talk about my experience, and what that exploration has been like. And if that sparks the beginning of a path for someone else to do their own exploration, I will be so excited and so honored. And the last thing there is just that I feel like I keep saying that it was a gift to be there with her. And it would feel like such a disservice not to find ways to pass that gift along. Like, what a profound gift to receive, and like really inspired, even if it's impossible, to find ways. It's like to receive such a beautiful gift. It just makes me want to pass it along to anyone else that I can.
And you do. You do.
This is a gift. I realized, thank you. I realized that I didn't. You had asked earlier about things that we did in the right around the death. So tending was really sacred and beautiful, and we did a lot of touch. So we did a lot of foot massage. I had a little bit of training in Thai yoga massage, so I'm comfortable like moving limbs and rotating joints. And so I was doing a lot of that, and it brought her so much comfort to be touched, to be massaged, to have her hand held. When I started doing the work, moving her arms and legs for her, she was just brought so much comfort by that practice. Brad, her husband, was reading aloud to her a lot of the time, like her favorite book, which is Watership Down. And her dad, when he arrived, was doing that also. And we were actually using a lot of your LOTUSWEI products, which you know. So I was giving her and the other caretakers and anyone who came into the house. So I was living with her, but she had lots of other friends who would come in for a few hours and provide other support. Everyone got oils, everyone got elixirs, everyone got spritzed with boundless wisdom or infinite love. And she was already someone who really appreciated your work. So it worked for her, but it helped us all. It helped us all. The inner circle of care, those of us who were living there, we got good at realizing that the next circle was trying to help take care of us also. So that was really useful once we realized it. Kelly died at home, and after she passed, we kept her body for some time, and we performed this really beautiful, really day-long ritual. We undressed her. The women surrounded her and undressed her and brushed her hair and washed her. We gathered flowers and plant matter from her property. She was an avid plant person. She had beautiful gardens, and we gathered flowers and herbs and greenery, and we made a pot of warm water with all of those in them, and we sang to her and bathed her, and we like just drenched her in oils, like this amazing abundance of scented oils. And we covered her in plant matter. So we dressed her in leaves and flowers. And while we were doing all of that, and that took some time, we were not in a rush, you know. We did her nails, we filed her nails. We just did we hugged her, we sang to her, we washed her body, we dressed her in plants and silk scarf covering parts of her. While we were doing that, the men had gathered up a bunch of like larger greenery and created a crown, and they brought it in and put it on her head. And after that, we toasted her. And after that, we left her body in that beautiful state, and people came and went. Her sisters were there, and one of her sisters had her son there with her, who was probably like a little over 1, and he was there helping us. And her dad came in and picked up Watership Down and read to her in the place where he had left off. And we just hung out with her. And then towards the end of that day, so she had died early in the morning, and towards the end of that day, Brad, her husband, decided that he was ready for her body to leave. And so they came to collect her body, and 3 of us stayed in the room with her and helped them wrap her body and move her. And we drummed her. I had her drum, so she has a skin drum that's made by the same woman that made my drum. And I had been using it while I was there, staying with her and working with it. And I drummed her out to the van, and her father and one of the other men found 2 of her other drums, and we drummed her body out to the van that took her away, and we drummed her down the street. And then after that, we gathered in the backyard and had a bonfire. So, and we were like making this all up, you know. It's funny because since she passed, I've seen some stuff on social media and different things that people have sent me about ways that you can keep the body and have these ceremonies and do these really beautiful things. None of us had seen any of that. We were just like, we were doing what felt right.
Yeah.
And it made a huge difference. It made such a huge difference to have that time with her, and to be able to sit with her and to have the death be not just like this thing that ended and she disappeared. We got to sit with her body, and it was, I think it made a huge, huge difference to have this ritual and to have this ceremony. And before she passed, we were doing lots of the same things, rubbing her with oils, making sure her room was full of plant life. It was like putting plants on her body and drumming for her almost every day. So it was a lot of the same stuff. And it was things that she loved, right? That's how you care for someone, right? You remember the things that they love and you just do those things.
And how amazing that you were in a group of people that all sort of settled into trusting themselves to do what they felt was right for them.
So amazing. Every day I would take a moment to find Brad and thank him, and find Kathy, Kelly's mom, and thank her, because they let me move into the house. And I had never met Kelly's mom, and, you know, I knew Brad a tiny bit, but not in a really deep way. And Kelly had let them know that she wanted me to come, and they trusted that, but they really, really let me in, and they let me provide care and be so close. And I was so thankful for that level of trust and openness that they had. And that move, to me, the way that they let me in, it set the tone. And everyone who came in was welcomed, and everyone was like trusted and treated with kindness, and that the thankfulness, you know, every hospice person who came got thanked and got offered something. And that was the vibe of the house. And it was, and that tone was set by Kelly and by Brad and by Kathy. And once I entered, you know, I caught on. It made a huge difference. It was inspiring and beautiful. And like I said, I wanted to make sure that they knew how thankful I was. So I made sure to let them know every day. It's an honor. It's an honor to be in that space.
And how do you find yourself using creative practices to explore ways to share, you know, these huge and big things that are almost indescribable? You know, like I've heard some of your poetry, and it is just like drop you to your knees, transformative, just to hear you read your poetry about your experiences. And as I explore in my own life and through some of the work that you and I and some of the other women are doing together, in terms of using languages that we're able to speak and listen to, and yet they're languages that we may not use in everyday life, you know, such as writing or movement. Or how are you, either through your own work or through projects like your project Liberated Lines, using different types of creative practices to describe and share and express experiences that are indescribable?
Yeah. I think that for me, on some level, the writing is it's got many layers and reason to it. On the one hand, it's an outlet. So that sense of, oh, there's a lot of emotion here, and I want to bear witness to it. Some of that for me can be done through creative process. It's allowing whatever parts want to speak to have voice to speak. And that process helps to alleviates some of the pressure of intensity and also helps me to soften and self-reflect a little bit.
And so when you when you were referring to, you were saying there's no feeling that I can't handle. And
right.
the trick is to just stay with all of them. And I mean, you've been instrumental in my life at just helping me stay with very, very intense emotions. And so how does creativity sort of funnel some of that pressure?
That's a really interesting question that I'll try to answer on the fly. But I think that one of the things, so you mentioned Liberated Lines, which is a project that I started and continue to collaborate on with my friend Alicia Summer. And we started Liberated Lines with this concept that we all hold multiple truths and that we are free to write all of those truths instead of silencing ourselves until we have things figured out into a singular truth. So that was one of the founding principles of Liberated Lines. And that really fits with this, like there's no emotion that I can't bear witness to. I am not that singular emotion. I'm this whole other thing. When the emotions are intense, it can feel like we self-identify as them, and that is really overwhelming. I have found that if I'm willing to give them voice, then I can also bear witness to them. And then that also allows me to see that I am the awareness of this feeling. I am the awareness of this experience. I am the awareness of this story. That's this thing that is the inherent me. And the emotions themselves and the stories and the experiences are going to come and go through this system that is me. And if I can let them have movement and not lock down in my little box with them, then that feels more comfortable to me. And one of the ways that I have found to sort of unlock the box or hold space for the many different truths is through creative practice. It also can help us to break out of old patterns. So specifically, the Liberated Lines that we're running in January, we're calling Writing a Brave New World. And our concept is that using creative practice to sort of dream beyond the current dreams. So activism through finding the farthest reach of creative process to dream us, to dream us into the unimaginable new world that is more open or more beautiful or more profound or more safe or more whatever we're desiring, right? And if we sit right here looking at everything the way that we always look at it, we try to fix what we believe to be true. But if we're willing to break down our clinging to the illusions of what we believe to be true and dive into creative process right beyond that, what could we possibly come up with? So that's Liberated Lines, and that's not entirely different from it's like writing the stories, letting go of the stories, awareness of the stories, seeing the patterns, seeing the emotions, learning your way, letting go of illusion, finding the next truth, letting go of that illusion, finding the next truth, letting go. Everything is in this constant potential, right? And we are, the closest thing to what we are is that, I like to call it the ocean state of compassion. That's my current working language. And that ocean state of compassion can hold the waves of all those stories and all those emotions and all those things that we believe are true, and also allow us to watch them wash away and see what the next thing to arise might be.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
But it's like being unafraid of yourself in creative process, because you might meet a part that is hurting, that is trapped in an old story, that is, and those parts, in my belief and in my life experience, those parts, they lose so those parts can have like a takeover quality to them in our system, and that can feel uncomfortable. And so then we tend to try to get rid of them. Like, I don't want to feel that. I don't want to know that. I'm tired of that. And so that's a pushing away. And it's like, if we can bring them in closer and hear their whole story and say, I hear you. I have compassion for you. I understand why that's what you believe. By the way, here's the whole system. Come closer to the truth of who we are. And that can actually provide ease. And in some ways, I think that's a process that can happen through inner work. It's a process that can happen through meditation practice. It's a process that can happen working with all different kinds of practitioners. And it's also a process that can happen through creative practice.
So if people want to find out more about Liberated Lines or the Death Medicine Keeper Project, what's the best way for them to get the information they need?
So my website, which is Soyala.com, is hosting the Death Medicine Keepers Project. And also on there, you can find Liberated Lines in the invitations section, or you can go directly to the liberatedlines.com website.
And Liberated Lines, are you meeting weekly? Or
so Liberated Lines is this time we're running it as sort of a virtual writing circle. So it's 7 weeks long, and it's four live hour-long virtual writing circles that are every other week. And in the weeks in between, there's an email sent with prompts. And then we have space open to share whatever's coming up outside of those hour writing circles. Death Medicine Keepers I have created 2 actual offerings. I really wanted it to feel like absolutely anyone could join. So Death Medicine Keepers Project is going to be a once monthly virtual gathering hosted on Zoom. So you can video conference in or call in. And that is free. It's donation supported. So I'm asking for donations to help cover the time and the cost, but anyone can join in. And then Death Medicine Keeper Circle is a 9-week, more intensive experience that's once a week calls, guiding through different practices, and then also check-ins in between.
Beautiful. And then I also want to mention that you and I are working on a project together.
I love working on projects with you.
So many projects in the works here, but that we are there's so many great things coming in 2018, but that on February 13th in New York City, we're working together with our team and Morgan Farley and Linda Singh on the latest iteration of the Flower Lounge, which has a lot to do with love and poetry and creativity and writing and movement and working with ourselves and all their glory. So if you're intrigued by what Robin is up to, check out Liberated Lines and the Death Medicine Keeper Project and Circle on her website, Soyala.com. That's Soyala.com. And if you are interested in coming to an incredible, unforgettable, beautifully intimate event in New York City on February 13th of 2018, you can visit our site as well at LOTUSWEI.com to check out all the event details. And just to sort of wrap up, Robin, is there anything that you find yourself, let's say this week or this month, sharing with people over and over? Is there something coming up lately? Is there some little part or piece of wisdom that you find yourself sharing?
I think that always, but especially right now, I find myself really, really encouraging people to open up or to give themselves freedom in the way that they might define what their practice is, so that they can locate the thing that gives them that sense of connection to the awareness that is not just thinking, and then work that practice. So some of the people that I work with, they I don't want to meditate. I don't want to do this. I'm not inspired to do spiritual practice, but they love running, or they love biking, or they love, and it's that may be your practice. And that just opening up the definition of what shifts you into the state where you feel that connection to the spacious container that you are. Consciously working that practice, and then also knowing that you have the ability at any moment to bring yourself back to that being state by remembering it. So if you get your practice in, whatever it is, you don't want to just leave your practice in the 10 minutes that it happens. You want to keep moving into that state as many times as you can remember to consciously, so that it can start to be the place that you live from. That's actually our human potential. And I think that we're being sold a much sort of cheaper and stupider version of ourselves all the time. And so it's like realizing that we really have the capacity to be this whole other thing. It takes some conscious practice at first, but it like anything you repeat becomes easier and easier.
It's so funny because last night I was having a conversation with Kate, and we were trying to figure out the next sort of common thread for the next 6 months of the Flower Evolution program. And we were looking at the different flowers and the elixirs and what they do. And we were just like, oh my God, these flowers are so mind blowing. Like, it's not like, how do we tie these together? There's no simple explanation. And what we came up with was that it's around exactly what you were talking about, that there is a way of being and a way of experiencing life and operating in life and sharing and communicating that has nothing to do with what we've already learned, that has nothing to do with thinking and figuring it out. And that there is this whole realm of experience that is available to us that we may not even be able to put into words.
Yeah.
And
we won't. I think that's death, right? Death isn't something that we're going to figure out by thinking. That's why it's one of the most ultimate examples. But if we can be with it, it's amazing, right? And it shows us how to just be in a certain being state, you know?
Right. And which is so fascinating, because it's like there's nothing that we have to do. So just by being with it, it's like it expands us, and we get this sense of like more and more and more and more sense of what that is out there that we can't quite put a finger on. That is the biggest version of who we are as humans, right?
And then letting that person be active in the world. Because I think that another piece is that people have a sense of a concept of a meditation practice that is inactive, but it's finding a way to understand the state that it puts you in, and knowing that that being can interact and be active and create in the world. And that is our actual human potential.
And can also inspire other people around us to utilize those forms of expansiveness, spaciousness, communication, being states. Yeah. You're so good at putting words to it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for joining us on this week's episode of the Flower Lounge. If you are interested in diving deeper into Robin's work, visit her website at soyala.com. Highly, highly recommended. And if you're anywhere near the East Coast in February, join us at the Flower Lounge and meet Robin in person in all her beautiful expressions and offerings. If you want to see her in person, visit us in New York City on February 13th. Thank you so much for joining us.
Can I say one last thing?
Yeah, of course.
I just want to thank you so much for having me here to have this conversation. It's so amazing to be invited into a space to actually not worry about if I say things right or wrong, and just talk about the things that I'm trying to work on. And I also just want to thank you for being the person that you are in the world. I think you're doing amazing work, and you are inspiring, and it's just a pleasure to be connected with you and collaborate with you when I have that opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you. The pleasure is all mine. Thanks, Robin.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to The Flower Lounge. I'm Katie Hess, and we'll be releasing a new podcast every Wednesday. If you like what you heard or you know someone who might be touched by our conversation, share it with them. And don't forget to subscribe. To find out what your favorite flowers mean about you, take the quiz at lotuswei.com.